This is a dissertation, a voiceover, the update of the paintings I'm working on, the Pacific paintings, and I'm going to include titles as they appear for you. And it's a voiceover, and it's a dissertation I've been thinking about doing for a while. And what I'm going to call this is that culture itself is a straw man. And a straw man, and the reason I say culture is a straw man, because it represents, or it pretends to be, something of significance and value to us historically. We have societies structured around beliefs, cultural, what are those? Those are standards of behavior throughout history that are considered to be of value and brilliance and enlightenment. And all I have to say is that if this has been a growing evolution of our humanity, whatever we have that represents a history of development, what it is that we have accomplished, and we end up in an age, what I call the age of fission, where we have invented a process that will radically alter life to the point where it may actually become extinct on Earth, then my question is that everything that is a standard, something that we adhere to, something that we actually believe to be of significance and important to all of us, is in fact the biggest straw man ever. To the benefit, obviously, of a very small group of people who have no regard for life, especially the vulnerable, life that is vulnerable. As we can see, even biblically, God in the Bible supposedly says, name all the animals, name all the creatures. It's a metaphor to say, you're dominant, go ahead and kick the shit out of anything that you want. How depraved is that? What a depraved God to actually suggest to people who are weak anyway, who would be willing to indulge anything that they would be capable of doing. It's kind of like, just because I can do something, I'll do it. This is God's order to humanity. Do whatever the hell you want. And what happens when do whatever the hell you want, which will bring me back into what I believe to be the substance of our humanity, which has nothing to do with our intelligence or brilliance. It has a lot more to do with how we are able to invoke our conscience, the part of us that cares about the very thing that we try to dominate and manipulate in this straw man. Culture is a straw man. And there are many representatives within this culture. And one of the most obvious groups to me in the winning team bunch are the eugenicists, who kind of crop up at every time. They come out of the woodwork, and they're lauded as being magnificent people, like Bertrand Russell or Bernard Shaw, people that you wouldn't suspect because they're so brilliant. The things they say about getting rid of useless life on the planet. Even people like Teddy Roosevelt, a raving eugenicist. He had opinions and thoughts about people that don't deserve to be alive on the planet. And even in front of his museum, he's sitting on a horse. He's sitting on a horse and having Nubian slaves run beside him. And then you have, as well, among these eugenicists, you have a lot of environmentalists who, in defense of, they're supposedly in defense of the vulnerable, but have decided that humanity, like David Suzuki, humanity are more like maggots than anything else. They're useless eaters, maggots. This is the David Suzuki version, or even Jacques Cousteau, people you don't suspect who have a love for nature, supposedly, but come out in depraved, radical ravings about humanity being worthless eaters and destroyers of everything. And humanity is not the destroyer of everything. It's the cultural straw man that manipulates, the cultural straw man that has taken over and undermines this conscience I talk about. Our conscience is undermined through culture, and culture as it is represented from one spectrum, the idea that cultures clash in wars and destruction, in endless wars and destruction. And we're now in a period of endless war and destruction run by the empire of death, the US, the empire, the pinnacle. These are the people that have perfected the destructions that the Romans wrought, and the Greeks as well, this continuous desire to come up with implements, weapons of mass destruction. One of the famous artists, Da Vinci, what his great mission was to give the Count in Milan all the weapons he needed to destroy his enemies and succeed. He was one of the people that designed weapons of mass destruction, an artist, a brilliant person. So intelligence and brilliance is not of value to us. This is my position. And when I think about the culture, being a painter, I've been painting, I'm an artist, and I've always had this affection, this feeling of, well, I'm part of a culture, and art is kind of the a representative of the highest point in what we call culture. But it no longer, if it has been in certain pockets, it's because certain artists have overcome their indulgence, their fears, and refuse to be manipulated and try to circumvent a system that basically undermines every living thing whenever it is required to undermine. And culture undermines each and individual calling. The individual calling, the eugenicists separate the haves and have-nots, and the have-nots are useless eaters like Bertie Russell or Bernard Shaw, representing it in their Man and Superman. No, what was that play? Ricky Tikki Taffy. I forget Man and Superman. And I wanted to make this clear, my position. In the backdrop, you're seeing my paintings that are about the Pacific, and the Pacific is going to be the domino that gets everything into the next level of destruction if, in fact, which I believe to be true, the radiation out of Fukushima is destroying monumentally this huge body of water, which gives us our oxygen, our food, on such a scale that literally the eugenicists are going to have their way. The straw man is going to have their way. That which is of least significance to us has become the greatest manipulation and controlling element in our lives. Culture, the straw man. Culture is the straw man. And there have been cultures in the past. I studied the polyandrous Hopi. And I think, you have a matriarchal society. There have been attempts to bring this level of feeling and caring in its very essence. Its very structure is based on caring and feeling around the female, the woman, the individual that bears and gives life to all of us. And of course, that culture is virtually destroyed. There may be one small area in the US where the Hopi are still functioning on some level. But even that, I think we need to shed ourselves of this culture. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. It's something that as each person becomes more deeply connected to their own calling, what I say is within each single one of us. We don't belong to a club, to a winning team, like all these people that are held up in culture as having been the representatives of their nations or a philosophy, an idea. We have everything that is required to make this work on a very simple, straightforward basis, and that is to care for each other and especially those that are vulnerable, the children. And you'll find quite regularly on YouTube, and this is how you can identify people that have no integrity. In their YouTube channels, they will attack. This is their primary operation. They attempt to assassinate characters. They have no content other than to attack someone. This is the nature of the straw man. Culture produces these attack dogs that actually try to undermine and diminish our aspirations, our desires. This comes up over and over again. It's in a microcosm, macrocosm. It works through the military-industrial complex and the nuclear criminal syndicate who are attempting to destroy, not only to assassinate our character, but all life. This is so obvious. How can you actually argue about the fact that these institutions, these cultural institutions, these corporations who fit in beautifully into our cultural networks with their suits and ties, these are the straw men. They present themselves as valuable and of meaning and significance to us, but they're not. They're not. Because they're undermining the very principle that has made us, or that has allowed us to succeed in spite of all what it is that we adhere to in history and culture and art, and all of that stuff is useless, because what makes us work is the fact that we care for the vulnerable, and we have faith in each other. Forget about belief. I don't dare. There is no point to having a belief. Belief and faith are two different things. Faith creates a hope in us. Belief creates cultures. Belief is the basis of culture. But if you have hope and you have faith in one another, if I have faith in a person and I trust myself, I don't need anybody to tell me the 10 Commandments, to say it's wrong to kill, to tell somebody, to say to somebody, oh, don't kill somebody. How ridiculous is that? You're going to have to chisel that into a stone tablet to tell me not to do something like that. I mean, how crazy. Why would anybody think they need anyone to tell them not to do that? You know it's wrong. You know it's wrong because you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, to hurt or destroy another life. Because there is a connection. I don't profess to understand this mystery, but I'm part of it, and I have a deep regard and respect. And the straw man called culture has diverted us from that. And I thought I just want to put this out, and because there are a lot of straw men, especially on YouTube, trying to disparage those that have significance. And isn't it interesting that it quite often happens to the people, the people who are attacked have the least means, are the least capable of defending themselves in terms of their resources, and don't actually appear to be that significant in the public eye. And you have to stop something early on so it doesn't become a movement or become stronger. Anyway, this is both a dissertation and an update on my Pacific paintings, and I've included the titles of these works, which are very different from anything that I've ever done before, because I say we live now in the age of fission, an age that is unsurpassed. There is no other age more monumental in the history of existence on this planet than the age of fission, and it is required of the people of insight, understanding, and foremost of all, people of conscience, and especially artists of conscience, to represent this age and be the alert other people of the times that we're in and what we're facing.